Hey everyone, so today I'm just going to be going through some of the basics of Anki to help you guys get started and just be a little bit familiar with the program. And then for downstate specific students, we'll discuss what tags may be high yield that you might want to start studying now before we get to the later units. So with that said, let's get started. So when you first load Anki, you should come to a screen like this. On the left-hand side here, you can see all your decks. And then here you can see how many cards you have due, how many cards you have new. All I really want to say about this is that the same way when you go to a website and you start interacting and you're searching for products or something like that, you're using like the user end of it, whereas lots of code has to go into the back end of it. So Anki is very similar. When you first load Anki, you're getting the user end of it. So you'll be able to click, let's click on a deck here. Tell me the history of me studying these decks, how many days in a row, how many days, how many cards a day I've been studying. And so if I go study now, it will start bringing up cards and I can click a space bar and get the answer to those cards and click the space bar again and move to my next card. And so this is like the user side of it. What's confusing when you first start with Anki is not this side per se. Usually what's actually more difficult is like the back end, similar to the way a website works, where they're putting code and information on the back end, telling the system what they want. You have to do the same with Anki. Anki is a Japanese program, and so it's not so user-friendly. This is what I think gets a little bit confusing. So that's mostly what we're going to be discussing today. So let's get out of this user side of it and reload Anki. Okay, so again, we now reloaded Anki. We're back to our original user end screen, and you'll see actually the number changed. I had 191 cards due. We did a card for the demonstration. Now I have 190 cards. So that's how that works. And so to go to the back end to really navigate where you want to go, start adding cards into your decks, we're going to go to Browse. So Browse takes you to the back end of things. Now, in the back end of things, what you'll see is all your decks. So these are the same decks that we'll see right here. You can compare. We have BNBMK, BNB storage, and you see we have the same decks here. These are not decks. These are called tags. Now, the difference between decks and tags are very important. Cards will be tagged based on content. So, for example, when I study, I generally like to use Boards and Beyond. And so what I can do is I can scroll to a specific tag called light year, and then I find under that tag Boards and Beyond. And then under Boards and Beyond are all the different folders of the videos that he uses. Then I can go to a specific video. And under that specific video, there are different cards. And so this will never change because a Boards and Beyond video, the cards in a Boards and Beyond video will never change. However, I can move these cards from deck to deck. So when we talk about decks, what we're really saying is a collection of cards. But when you're searching for cards, you're not searching it by deck, you're searching it by tags. Tags are descriptions of cards, and those tags will never change. So you should always be able to find them. So that said, let's get started here a little bit. So these are the decks. We have BNBMK, BNB storage. The decks you get when you first start with Anki will be a little bit different. These are my personal decks, but the idea is the same. These things here are the decks. And so if I were in your shoes, I would likely be studying foundations. So I'd scroll down here to this tag, foundations. I'm going to click this arrow here, and now it expands it. And under foundations, I have different types. I have units 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. I can then subdivide based on the tags which unit I'm in. So being if I were in your shoes, I'd be in unit 1, I'd go to unit 1. And now I can decide what topic do I want to study. Do I want to study anatomy? Do I want to study histology? Do I want to study by lecture? So let's quickly here, because this is unique to unit 1, you'll have lectures, and every lecture is identified here. And you can really just go here, go to the lecture. Now I've super narrowed down which cards I want. I want the cards from foundations in unit 1 in a lecture in this specific lecture. To the right here are the cards within this tag, meaning all these yellow cards here are the cards associated with this lecture. If you see up here on the left corner of the screen, you'll see 585 cards. It's a lot of cards for one specific lecture. That's why I generally don't recommend these. So it's overkill. There's no way there's 585 facts to remember from a single lecture. So it's overkill if you ask me, but if you're having trouble with specific concept, it may be a good idea to find the lecture and find the specific cards. Once you've found the cards that you want to add, what you do is you can select one and you could do Control A. This tells Anki that you want to pick every single card that is in this tag. So every card that's in this lecture you want to do. If that wasn't the case, let's say you only found a few cards, you can click the card that you want and do Control, and then click all, you say you only want these 5 to 6 cards or whatever it is. Control, select all these cards. Now you're telling Anki, I don't want all these cards, I just want these 6. The next step would, again, Control and click D. Well, actually, we'll start with J. So you do Control J. Now, if you notice, the J made these cards white. Now, what does that mean? That means I told Anki that these are the cards I want, and now activate these cards. Meaning, when you find a tagged card, you found the card you want, but you haven't told Anki that it's the card you want. So by doing Control J, what you're doing is unsuspending the card. When you unsuspend the card, you've now made it active, which means it can now be studied. However, in order to study a card, if I quickly show you remember our user-friendly screen, our user end, only had the decks. So the only way to access active cards, is to put it in a deck. So it's not just enough. I did Control J and I unsuspended these cards. I told Anki, make these cards active. I now have to put them in a deck so that I can go study them. And the way to do that is, again, select these cards and do Control D. Once you do Control D, you can now pick which deck you want to put them in. And once you've put them in that deck, you can now study them. So I'm going to put them in, let's put it in a default deck. Or you know what? I'm never going to use these cards. Let's put them in old garbage cards, a deck I made just to put in cards I no longer want. And I'm going to click Move Cards. Now, when I leave here, when I leave the back end of things, I'm going to X out. And when it reloads, you'll now see in my old garbage cards deck, I now have these 6 cards that I highlighted and made active. And it's telling me these are new cards. So let's go in here real quick. And we can start to review these cards. And so you click the space bar, fill in the blank. Great. We'll do 2 cards. So now we've done 2 cards. Let's exit out of here. We'll restart Anki. And you'll see that now Anki says, oh, okay, you've done, out of the 6 cards, only 4 of them are new. 2 of them are due for review. So the way the algorithm works is generally when you get a card and you see it for the first time, Anki wants you to see that card 10 minutes after the first time you see it. So when you're adding new cards, essentially you're going to have to do it twice in order to clear your cards for the day. So what do I mean by that? Let's go back into this deck. I'm going to study all the cards. We're going to go all the way to the end. And you can see on the bottom here, these numbers are changing. So 1 is how many new cards I have left, which means I've reviewed the other 5 cards. And so now those are, the 5 is highlighted red, as in you already did it once to just for your review. And 1 card is highlighted blue that I still need to see it for the first time and then review it. So let's do that. We saw it, this is the last card. And if you'll notice down here, there are different settings. So there's good, easy, and again. Good is the standard. If you feel comfortable with a card and you trust Anki's algorithm to bring up the card in at the time they think appropriate, then you should be clicking good. If it's a card you really almost never want to see, it's super easy. You can click easy, and instead of showing it to you in 10 minutes, it won't show it to you for 4 days. And these intervals change, meaning, so I'll show you. Let's see. Let's finish this card. Great. So now all these 6 cards that we went through, we did them once, and now we're going to review them. So we're going to do it again. And so what you see now is instead of 10 minutes, now under the good on the bottom here where it says good, it says 1 day. So it says that, okay, you've seen this card, you reviewed the card once. Now I feel comfortable that you don't have to see this for a day. Tomorrow, when we get to this card, it's going to say, great, you've seen it once, you reviewed it once, and then you reviewed it the day later. Now you don't have to see it for 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, depending on how long it really takes you to do the cards. But the point is that the algorithm says that the interval between seeing the card again and again is going to be longer and longer and longer. But the idea is that you're bringing it up enough that by the end of the day, you'll always be comfortable with these cards because they're constantly coming up, and the algorithm is made so that way it's enough that it's constantly reinforcing. So generally I say, just if you're comfortable with the cards, keep it as good. If you're having trouble with the card, by all means, tell Anki, I want to see it again on the left here. I want to see it in less than a minute. I want you to bring it up again. And that what that tells Anki is that once you reviewed it, instead of the 1 day interval, the 3 day interval, or whatever it is, you're going to see that card more frequently because you're having trouble with them. So let's continue with these cards. I'm just pressing space to get through them. Once you finish them, it then says, congratulations, you finished this deck for now. So I now have done my daily reviews, and you can see on the schedule, it's now scheduled 6 cards due for tomorrow. So because I reviewed 6 cards today and I did them relatively quickly, it's like, okay, great, you're going to review them tomorrow. So now, instead of exiting it out, you could have also just gone to decks, and it brings you back to this user. And what you see is if we go to the old garbage cards deck, I have no more reviews left. I have no new cards, no reviews to do because I've just done them all. So again, the flow of things is that generally, let's say you watch a lecture and you now want to study. You load Anki, you get to this page. However, you have to load the back end in order to get stuff in. So we're going to go to Browse. Once on the back end, you identify which cards you want. So if you're doing it based on lecture and you're in Unit 1 and Downstate and you want to go to Foundations, we can actually, it gets a little confusing. You can really uncollapse these because it's really, everything's subdivided. So you can go to Foundations and say, okay, break that up into units. Unit 1, I can go to lecture and I can choose whatever lecture I want. I could then choose my cards, which cards I want to study. Do Control A if you want to get all the cards in this lecture. If not, you can just highlight them here. You're going to do Control J. That made them unsuspended, meaning they're now active cards. And Control D allows you to pick any deck you want that you'll remember to go to and study, and you can click Move Cards. And then once you've put these cards in, let's do that one more time. We can move our cards. Let's see where they came up. They came up into B&B storage. So these 11 cards now are under B&B storage, and I can study them and review them at whenever I want. So let's go back so we get a little more comfortable. I just want to make sure I actually, so, you know, you'll see as I'm doing this, but actually those cards, I actually don't really want them. So I'm now selecting everything that's under lecture, not just a specific lecture. It's everything that's in a lecture. I'm selecting all of them. I'm unsuspending all of them. And then I'm selecting all of them to suspend all of them. If you didn't follow that, that's okay. But the reason I did this is because I had now cards I didn't want in one of my decks. So that's really it, the basics of Anki, how to use it. I would say if you're in Downstate, the cards I would look out for are these anatomy cards. So you can scroll to anatomy and then you can go to your back and you can say, I want to study lab 6, I want to study lab 7. You can go to head and neck. I want to study the medial compartment. Sorry, this is lower extremity. The point is that you can get really specific with what you're studying, and these are not so bad. This is 85 cards with this tag. I wouldn't add all 85 cards at once. I would say for Unit 1, the name of the game is being specific with what you want to study, because I don't think at this point you'll have enough tolerance to do 85 cards. And the thing with Anki is that it's really good when you're consistent with your cards, but if you're going to miss a day, they just build up and get impossible to do. So especially your first unit, don't overdo it with the cards. Pick specific cards that you like. You know, whether it be 10, 20 cards, pick them specifically and add them to your deck. Don't add 85 cards at once, because then you're going to be stuck reviewing 85 cards you likely won't be able to finish. It's going to build up to the next day. But in general, I think these tags would be really helpful. So if you want to get a head start in anatomy and you know what you're going to study, you can just slowly be adding anatomy cards. And I think that'll be really great for studying. And that's really it for now. So the main thing is Control A or Control J, Control V. You've learned how to go in and out of the user end and the back end of Anki, and you've learned how to move cards. And once your cards are in your decks, you can get studying.